Уважаемые коллеги, раз-раз.
Dear colleagues, can you hear me? Good afternoon, all of you. My name is Andrei Proshin. I'm now head of consulting to build security operation centers on premise with customers of Telecom Solar. I've spent quite a lot of time working as a consultant in professional services, implementing information security solutions, and one of the projects was about security operation centers. I'll talk today more about the specificity of building them, how to make it so that you can build them yourselves, and how to avoid common mistakes. Had we had not such a big stage and had I been closer to the audience, you could have asked me why a company that's doing information security services is going to talk about building on-premise SOCs. So the answer is quite simple. Not all customers, not all companies are prepared to outsource this function, and they want to try, or maybe they already build such a center within themselves. Also, I would ask you to pay attention to the three trends. The first one is the geopolitical situation as it has been exacerbated since the end of last year, which pushed people to prioritize SOC building. And also, secondly, the companies that own critical information infrastructure sites have finally approached a situation that they need to implement monitoring function. They have done categorization, implementation of information security infrastructure, and have now passed to the next stage. Also, and the third factor was that in the beginning of May, a new decree of the President of the Russian Federation has been published for additional requirements to information security in the Russian Federation. This applies to both federal executive power bodies and other organizations. So all this led to a situation where the number of requests and questions about building your own SOCs has grown considerably. So let's take a look at the typical points that arise when discussing an on-premise SOC. The classic picture, how to do it with high quality, fast, and not expensively. Actually, this can all be implemented. This can all be complied with. But of course, there are certain risks that your company can face in the short term, mid-term, and long term. Let's start with the most interesting option, where you want to do it with high quality and not expensive. It can be done, but for this you need to have an expert or a team of experts who already have practical experience, kind of an in-source consultant, who will help you to avoid risks so that you shouldn't come back to rework. But this entails a lot of risks. So if this person leaves, then your company, you're staying with nothing. It would be difficult for you to continue the project if such a person leaves it. The next option, fast and cheap. It can also be done, but it more looks like a Potemkin village. So on paper, everything would look fine, all the components would be there, the processes would be described, the content will exist within CM, but the first pen test will show you that the SOC doesn't see anything. No detection and response is happening. So again, it looks like there are a lot of risks about this approach. And the top right corner, you have with high quality and inexpensively. This is also quite a frequent option that people take. But there are risks about the time of implementation. So it may take years, 3 to 5 years, for instance. And also, there are such things as a lack of funds. For instance, you're going to have a small team at the starting point, and you're going to have certain technologies missing that you would not be able to tackle with this team. So you implement something, then a year or two later, you start implementing another technology, but then you find out the previous technology isn't compatible with the new ones, and so you can, go this circle over and over again until you find. So I think the best approach is to do it with high quality, fast. Its only drawback is that it costs a lot, and the only way is to attract or invite consultants who already have a lot of experience to avoid the biggest hazards that people run into when implementing a SOC. If we consider a project to build an in-house security operations center, different people have different attitudes. Some people think it's quite easy and simple. Implement CM, hire people, and start working. But we, of course, understand that it's a more complicated story that takes time and also has a lot of building blocks that you need to put together in a certain way. So this would be a unique individual combination that should address the unique risk of each specific company. So we split it in three phases. Pre-project phase, where you collect information about the situation. The second is building and launching a security operating center. And finally, operation and maintenance. So at the pre-project phase, the main goal is to understand the risks or inadmissible events that can affect the company's business. All this requires either to build a SOIB or a security operations center. If the SOC is already there and you want to modernize it, then a maturity review would be useful. What to do so that it could move to the new level. And finally, the most important phase is to create a concept, considering all the inadmissible events, all the attack scenarios that you have identified in the first phase. So you can build a project consisting organizational measures, technical measures, administrative measures in order to create this team, split its operation into phases, prioritize projects, and this will allow you to cover all the inadmissible events that apply to this company with high quality and one by one. So what does it contain? Design of the SOC systems. It's not only about CM, but there are other systems. It's the content, the most important thing, what you have inside these systems. And again, it's not only the CM content, it's the content for all other systems. So this includes processes and KPI metrics, employee training, and a lot of other things. And once we've done all this, once we build all this, it's important to keep working with this. So you can't treat a SOC project as a project that has a start and finish. You need to keep working on it, improving it, because new threats arrive, new people arrive, and so you can use red teaming exercises as part of further maintenance, cyber exercises, and such expert support activities as forensics, early detection, and other similar things. What you shouldn't forget, SOC can't be separate from all other functions of information security. If we take a typical and classic model of cybersecurity framework, there are 5 main elements there. SOC, CERT, they partly cover 3 of them. Identification of assets, detect, detection of information security incident, and respond. That's response to information security incidents. But this system is not going to be fully fledged without a security system that you'll have to implement in the protect phase, or without the training and the inclusion, involvement of the team that will have to provide for the restoration if the incident has happened. And here, unfortunately, we have to state that there's no system that will cover an asset or a business process company with 100% reliability. You always have to consider that remaining risk as a reality. What you should start with, there are two approaches, but we believe that the right approach to build an SOC, because it requires a lot of investment, both direct investment and in terms of the efforts of those people who work in the company. So therefore, you should talk to business, the business customer. Quite often, there's a problem here because SOC starts to be built from the assets up, but not from the business logic. So here, we propose to split it into the two goals, or better say, two stakeholders. It's business, what's important for them in the SOC, to analyze the inadmissible events that can happen and how they affect the company's business, and try to minimize such events. And the second thing is to understand the level of investment that you need to make the priority of these actions and how they will affect the minimization of risk. For the information security, chief information security officer, it's just not been mentioned here. So they should have a single language, the same language to talk with business. Why we implement the SOC, or why so much money is required exactly to forestall those inadmissible events. So what does the CISO get? The unbiased and accurate indicators of the current security level, drafting the target state of the SOC, just like normally the current state, target states, and how you pass the way from the current state to the desired states. And we here come to the conclusion that you need to start with planning rather than buying the systems. And what this includes, the analysis of cyber risks, that's inadmissible events, and working out a concept for the SOC. We have our own methodology for such work that matches inadmissible events with how the SOC functions. In fact, this is provided by several components: the scenario detection, the phase structure of implementation, and the coverage. So all these things should be defined at the outset, including the pace with which it should happen. The most frequent question, on-premise or MDR? I actually started with this. Quite often when the customer arrives, you say, they say that according to the new decree and with the new requirements, we want to build an SOC. And I very much like how it works in Nizhny Novgorod with another customer. I just want something like that. Actually, which way the customer should go depends on several factors: the finance, the economy, the economics, and you have to assess a lot of components, hardware, software, and people that will allow you to come up to the amount. The second point is politics. Some companies have a policy not to pass information security to outsourcers, so they need to deal with it themselves. There are also some restrictions in some cases. For instance, if the company works in such a region, but there are not enough qualified talent, there's not enough qualified talent in the region, so they just won't be able to hire the people. And finally, some companies have a reputation component. So we're strong and cool, and we just want to have our own SOC, just like the best guys. So usually, based on our experience, we have seen a lot of such situations. And the graph here shows a picture. What does it say? Usually, the planning goes for the long term, 3 to 5, sometimes to 7 years. So if the picture compares with the top line, the option of your own implementation when they build their own team, use their own technology, and at the bottom we see different variants of the service model. And we ran the comparison for you to better understand what is this comparison if you're not linked to a specific system or tool. So we have compared several CM1 and CM2 options and different ownership models, cloud and on-premise. And you see that in 5 years, on the 5 year horizon, the MDR model wins. It's quite often better to use service financially, but that doesn't apply to all criteria, and that's normal. So what general recommendation can we give? Even for the time of implementation, when the company is building something of their own, it's not the best thing to pass. It's actually useful to pass some function to an outsourcer, just to learn how the not to outsource certain functions. Firstly, to give some experience to your own specialists, and also to get experience responding. So you'll have to respond whether you outsource these functions later. But before that, you need to do it yourselves. And the third point, you'll do a fast start, and will start returning the investment that the company is making. A risk-oriented SOC. Does this concept exist at all, and does it make sense? Well, it's a matter of debate, actually. I've already spoken about two different approaches. Start from assets and start from risks. I believe that the risk-oriented approach is very promising. It indeed helps setting up and implementing a security operations center project correctly and with the admissible risks. This is not a new methodology. Here we see several examples at the bottom of similar methodologies. They're quite new. Line 1 is information security 2.0 from Positive Technologies. Then there's the stack methodology and American consequence-driven cyber-informed engineering created in the Department of Energy of the United States for the critical infrastructure sites. And they're all talking about the same thing. You need to define inadmissible events, draft the attack vectors, understand which systems collect events from which systems, from which sources, what kind of SLAs are enforced, and what security tools need to be implemented to mitigate those attacks. But the point is that these methodologies are focused on building an information security center. All the 5 functions. In our case, we're talking about Security Operations Center. And all this chain leads us to risks, to KPIs, to scenarios, and to SLAs. So how different scenarios, how fast you need to respond to them, respond, enrich, and work with them. So this is the approach based on risks. You shouldn't forget the fact that, unfortunately, we'll never be able to achieve 100% effectiveness. There's always the residual risk, and one of the solutions is to get it insured. They're talking about this quite a lot. You can do that. You can try it. And what's the point? You implement a lot of mitigating measures. They already minimize the risk, and this residual risk remains not to be too large. And companies who provide the service look at what has been implemented, how it's been implemented, and they work with a lower insurance sum, which makes this thing of interest to the customer. Now let's look at 3 cases from real life experience. How you should approach and how you can avoid typical mistakes. So the first thing is a feasibility study. Feasibility studies happen everywhere, not for SOCs, but also for other systems and firewalls. So what's important to take into account here? You need to combine technical analysis. So it's not just questionnaires or interviews. You should technically enter systems that the customer is using, have expertise to do that, and see how things are set up. So what SOC-related capabilities are already there. You should also have one-on-one interviews with customers' business because you can learn a lot of information from. Just an example, let's say with the industrial control system, when we attach industrial systems to SOC, those who have done that know that there are a lot of difficulties there. Thing is that the systems are not always modern in terms of information security. It's very difficult to collect the required events from them. If they exist, they don't have enough information. And there's the general problem of installing anything into an operating environment. In order to understand how the SOC will work, we are offering an opportunity to roll out, to deploy the systems that the customer has on our test beds, including PLC or SCADA systems, and understand what logging capabilities exist, how they can be set up, and then you can come back to the customer showing them the solution that's already been tested. In this case, we give a detailed presentation of the function of these SOCs function that you can provide. The next point, CM content. Many people understand it as precedent rule that exists in the CM system. In actual fact, it's not exactly this way. Content consists of a lot of diverse information, some lists, exclusion lists, for instance, that are used by the correlation rules so that incidents should work out and the analyst could work with them. These are connectors, normalization rules, enrichment mechanisms, and finally, these are mock-up files for the dashboards for the analysts to see the information. So the process of implementing of passing some content to the customer is not as simple as it would seem. You shouldn't approach it as Project FD. So you've implemented CM, you've implemented the content, and so please, dear customer, use it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. You need to do three things in parallel. First, to develop a process so that people who are going to work with the incidents should understand how they work, to understand the output, the outcome, and could affect the work through the exclusions. And secondly, it's the third line of work, so the CM engineers could understand the structure of this content and could develop, enrich it, and modify it through their own efforts. And the third item is training. You need to train the teams, not only just train, but also to do the evangelization, as we call it, when we need to explain to the customer why the structure is like this, why it works like this, and why is it correct, so that they could get inspired by that and could work with that. So on the output, you have the project and specialists who can maintain and develop it further. And finally, the third point, incident response, is called so-called playbooks. What is this? It's a certain algorithm with responsibility areas with SLAs and a flow chart of how the response team of the SOC and CERT are going to work with an incident should it happen. And so there's a subtle point here. Usually, when an SOC is implemented, the number of rules is measured in dozens and maybe even hundreds. So to develop a playbook and to maintain it in a workable condition after the implementation is not the simplest of tasks. So, as a solution for such large projects, to use a catalog of atomic rules. In the playbook, they often use the same between different playbooks, and of course the consultant methodologies takes a lot of time to draw it up for each process. So the catalog of such atomic rules allows people to refer to the common things. So if you want to change something, you do it in the catalog rather than your specific process. So it applies both to a manual response definition and automated approach. In the automated approach, this catalog approach is very useful. And the output, we are getting a reduction of costs, both in the implementation and in the maintenance of this playbook set further on. Conclusions. First, please bear in mind those inadmissible events match the SOC structure to them and to the risk analysis results. Second, consider all stages of building an SOC, not just the CM and hiring. Look at the picture broader. Support interaction between teams at the implementation phase. So if you would do it differently with IT people, with manufacturing engineering and others, they all should be inspired by this common idea and work together. It's not a trivial thing to do, but you need to strive for that, because otherwise, if all of you does something separately, you'll have to deal with resistance from your colleagues. Same thing about consultants. The more personal, face-to-face communication, the more you can learn. That was number 3. And finally, number 4. Work with reliable partners, because there are pitfalls everywhere, and so choose reliable partners. That's all from me, and if you have any questions, I'm prepared to take them. And if you have no questions, I'll be happy to welcome you at our booth. And again, please don't hesitate. Come to us with any questions. We actually have specialists there, both risk analysis, technology things, and I'm sure we'll be able to find an answer to any of your questions. Thank you very much.